Let's just see if I can go back in time and see if I can come up with the first job I ever had was probably, I think I worked at like an Orange Julius, dispensing out the burgers and making the little frosty drinks, right? And I got to wear the little brown jet shirt, and I put the little brown hat on, and I was like, I can remember my weakest moments were when the ladies would come up and they want an egg with their drink, and you had to crack an egg, and it's like, as a man, like, it's not a skilled profession, right? And you'd be sitting there going, okay, ma'am, and I found out later that if you crack an egg hard, it actually works better than trying to be gentle, and then you get like 1,000 of the shells in there, and you're trying to pick them out, and the ladies are like, forget it. So that probably would have been the first kind of paying job. And then, but I've had, I've worked at like Sears, out in the warehouses moving furniture, and then I went to pumping gas. Everybody does that. But again, you have to realize I'm Canadian, so pumping gas and minus 20 degrees is a little more manly than, and let me tell you that when you're the only guy doing it full serve and it's 40 degrees below zero out there on a Friday and everybody's dressed up going to parties, they hunt you down, right? And you're like, oh. And you're out, you freeze. And the only thing you can do is every now and then you can run inside, still squint and see the pump, and then go, oh, okay, and then go, okay, and you guess how many gallons a car has, and you almost become an expert at it. And then you run back up, but you see the people in there, because when you put it in and you run away, they start getting panicky on you. And then probably the highlight was working at a diaper factory, where we put in 16-hour days, and I seen every single color of crap that you can possibly imagine exists on this planet. And we never used gloves. That was the one thing in hindsight that was like, why did we never use gloves when we were dealing with crap literally up to our elbows? But, we weren't that smart. When I was younger, I was the proverbial best artist in the class. There's always that kid right there. So I can remember literally as far back as kindergarten that I was the guy who put the cow in the barn on the plane. Right? Everybody else drew the horizontal line, and I was like, what are you talking about? You just color the whole background green, and then you just put the barn up here, and the cow down here. It was like an aerial shot. And I did a painting of a baseball player. I remember, and I was living in Anaheim, and they put it up at Anaheim Stadium, and I remember one of my proud moments walking with my dad, seeing my painting at Anaheim Stadium. But, up until probably I was 17-ish or something, it was just doodling, and it wasn't until I started collecting comic books that I actually started following them and go, hey, instead of just doodling and doing random drawings, why don't I kind of focus on one kind of skill? And the skill at that point became teach myself how to do comic books. And so from the comic books, I just sent off my samples and eventually broke in. At this point, I'm in high school, and I'm just starting to teach myself how to draw. I'm going, okay, how did they do comic book faces and eyes and arms? And I was literally dissecting pieces, and I draw like a hand for a week, So you go, okay, and okay. There's 100 poses for hand. And by Monday, you suck. But by Sunday, you're actually pretty good because you've done it like 100 times. You go, God, that's not bad. That's a better hand I was drawing on Monday. And I do that with every piece of the body. And then I'd start to glue pieces together, right? Oh, can I do a forearm and a hand? Wow, look at that. And eventually, I just sort of taught myself how to do the entire body. I would say 95% of people in comic books are self-taught. They don't go to school. They don't study it. Because comic books are very melodramatic, and everything's about staging and posing. It's not very. You don't draw aliens from life and your spaceships from life. So you sort of have to all make it up. But after I taught myself how to draw, I started sending the samples off, and eventually, after 700 letters and 300 rejections, that somebody said, okay, stop sending samples. We'll give you a job. I think that was it. I think they literally got tired of me sending them so many packages over. And they just went, give the kid a job, and we won't get these packages every single month because you just keep sending us packages and he won't go away. It's like a pest. So, I was pretty diligent. Yeah, stubborn, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I was probably considered a late bloomer, given that most comic book people break in around 18, 19. So my life was a little bit different. That I was 23. About 24 is when I signed my first contract, which was the upside of that is that if you start late, then I figured that everybody had about 6 years. So I go, wow, that's cool, because now I'll be washed up in my 30s. I'll just cross 30 and then I'll be washed up. But I can say, hey, I started in my 20s, I'm washed up in my 30s, I had a good career. Where somebody who basically started at 21 would get washed up at 26. It was like I started and was washed up in the same decade. And it's like, it's not nearly as cool for a resume, right? So like, it's okay if you start a little bit late. But I was living in a trailer, small little trailer, in a little college town. I just finished graduating, and my wife was still going to college, and I would just sit and huddled, next to the heater, given there was snow on the ground half the year, just doing my little pages and eking out literally a minuscule living at that point, trying to hone my abilities. I mean, if you take a look at my early artwork, it's fairly pathetic, but luckily, I think they saw in my samples that like I was horrible and I got to like okay, so they gave me a job at okay, and they were hoping that I would continue to advance. And then the ball's in my court, and I can honestly say that my artwork today is 10 times what it was when I first broke in. Comic books are good for a couple of reasons. Number one is that the advent of courier services allowed you to get out of New York City. Historically, up to about 75, you had to be in New York City, because that's where Marvel Comics were and DC Comics were both there. You had to live there. It was a little fraternity. But once all of a sudden a couple guys went to the West Coast and you could use the post office, and then all these overnight services, it didn't matter where you lived now. You could live in Timbuktu, and as long as you were handing in the work, it was kind of, now it opened up the floodgates of, now we can hire somebody like in 50 states. So the talent pool actually ended up growing at that point. But I never really had to go to New York. I went to conventions. I met people at conventions. But the great thing about comic books is that because they judge you solely on your artwork, they don't ask any follow-up questions to it, which I think is why the community is kind of uplifting overall, is they don't sit there and go, how old are you? What sex are you? What denomination are you? What's your skin color? They don't know any of that. They just like, they go, wow, this kid can draw, and then they go hire them. And everything else is irrelevant to them. So you have a big blend of different kinds of people. Now, let me also say that it's skewed mostly to males, because again, of the content, superhero comic books, sort of appeals to the male population. So we don't have a big female artistic community. But within the community we do have, it's pretty diversified, and you got all different kind of walks and shapes. Every place else outside of North America really doesn't fall into the same demographics, and the reason is because historically, comic books in Japan and in Europe and in these developed countries aren't superhero kind of male-oriented action stuff that we have here. It's dealing with detectives, it's dealing with romance, it's dealing with suspense and drama, a lot of comedy and things like that. So the superhero shtick that works very well in America a lot of times does not translate outside of the boundaries of our country, because again, people go, oh, so I don't get it, what's that about? Just like there's certain movies that don't translate, right? Because again, they're so tied to a certain culture that it's, okay, well, here's a movie on the plight of the American Indians. Well, what's somebody, sitting in Germany care about that? It's like, I'll never meet an Indian, what do I care? So superhero comic books that deal specifically with Americana sometimes really it doesn't translate, and people kind of go, nah, that's not comic books, this is what we got. And they're more sophisticated. Henceforth, if you've got ideas that are broader and you're more sophisticated, then you're going to get a bigger range of people, and that includes both sexes. So that's why every other country but us is a little more evenly matched. I never wanted a 6-year career, I wanted a 60-year career, right? So what you have to do at that point is put the fear of God into yourself. So I go, it's too easy to get washed up in this business, and it's the entertainment business to some degree, which is very tough. So how do I survive? Well, there's a couple of different ways. One, you have to be a fairly skilled artist. Like, step one, if I couldn't draw, I was done very quickly. And then step two is, I don't control that marketplace, which is comic books. So my fear still is there. Even today, it's still there, that goes, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, which at the early point in my career was comic books. And so, like, from a business point of view, from a career point of view, from just going, I don't want to actually have to go get another job. I need to sort of diversify. From an artistic point of view, where I'm proud of what I do, I want to take it to the world. And unfortunately, at that point, everybody in the world didn't read comic books. So I go, well, what does the rest of the world do? Oh, they watch TV, they go to movies, they wear T-shirts, they play video games, they buy, product at store. I mean, so now I got to get there. Not because I wanted to start companies, let me say, far from it, that my 7 companies, none of them I had any idea I would start. It was just a way to facilitate the message to the masses, to go, look what I do, isn't that cool, isn't that cool, isn't that cool, isn't that cool? I mean, that's all it is. And someday if I feel like I blanket the world, then my next question is going to be, somebody let me know when you find life on another planet, because then there's my next target audience, right? Oh, there's little green guys with antennas, cool. Because I'm proud. There's a lot of artists that sort of shirk away from showing their stuff. I find that odd, that it's like, I'm going to draw this, and they almost like want to do an interview with you to show it. Like, are you smart enough to get this? This is high art. This is highbrow. Are you intelligent? Do you have a BA? And like, you know what? Just draw and show, and let people then make the choice themselves. So to me, I want to create, show, and then let the audience be literally the complete judge of that. So between just being afraid that if I just stayed in comic books, I'd be one-dimensional. I had to branch out, and trying to get to the world, they both sort of serve the same purpose, which is going different places. I consider myself to be a warrior. I wish I was born literally 400 years ago. And the reason is because back then when you got angry at people, it was, I pull my sword and you pull your sword and let's go, right? And the first one to lose their head, they lose, right? So when I watch a movie like Braveheart, then I go, that's how you settled your differences. Now today, the way you settle differences and the way you kill your opponent is you take market shares away from them, right? And you like steal their demographics, and you get shelf space, and you give them little bleeding ulcers. And it's for a guy who wants to like unscathe or unsheath the sword. It's not really satisfying, It's like like William Wallace got the lop, and I have to like go, good, we stole 2%, like big deal, right? Big deal. But that's the laws of the land, and I can't O.J. Simpson people. So I just have to sort of kind of like, do something normal. But the biggest fear is that you don't become the beast that you're trying to slay. And so the 7 companies that I own were started because they said can't be done, or won't do it, or, kid, you're crazy. And so do I want to be a businessman? No, I'm an artist. Do I want to have fun with, with my art and my friends and family? Absolutely. But if it meant that I can't get my message across because I got a bunch of stubborn people, well, I'm twice as stubborn, and I'm like, okay, so you won't do it that way. Well, what if I do it myself? What if I start the company? What if I spend my own money? What if I manufacture it myself? What if I distribute it myself? None of this is magic. Let me also tell the audience that everything that exists in the world is not magic. It's just that we have a common denominator. Might makes right. And it's like, so if you've got 4,000 people and $1 billion, you can usually sort of shove stuff down people's throats. And that's why the big corporations like succeed very quickly. I can't, the goal isn't for me to beat Time Warner, because again, it's like, it's huge. It's just, it's to become a quick enough mover so that theoretically Time Warner can't beat me, right? So I become literally the gnat to the giant, right? And then what ends up happening, I find it works unbelievable. That once they kick you out the first 2 times going, you're insane, take away this idea. Once you actually go out and do it on your own and you prove it to be successful, then they're like, get me the number of that kid, right? And they bring him in, or they go, he's already doing it, get me the number of somebody else and let's do a knockoff, So it's always weird that as you fight status quo, that if you do it different, then your success becomes the new status quo on some level. So all the changes I wanted to make on Spider-Man, they were like, no. And then I just went, screw it, and I ignored them anyways, and I did it, the sales went up, to the point that when I left, the new kid coming in, you got to draw like that Todd guy. So here's the guy they were fighting against, and now it's like, and that new kid shouldn't be saying, okay, I will draw like Todd. He should be going, no, I want to be just like Todd, which is, I don't want to draw like the guy before me, which happened to be me. That's what, because if you make this kid draw like me, how do you know he didn't have an idea is 10 times better than I had. So if you don't ever try and pull that from people, but you know what, like it's more comfortable for people to take the path less, you know, or more traveled for the executive, and the other one I like to take the other one, and you just go. You know what, I haven't really done the psychoanalysis of Spawn, and do I think that he's like something that's missing for society to help mend its personal wound? No, I don't think any of the above. You know, is it wholly original? Absolutely not. Guy coming back from the dead. There was a guy called Dracula, right? So, it's not there. I believe that part of his popularity overall, not just here with HBO, but overall, is because at least initially, I was conscious about fragmenting it, so that the book, the comic book, is not the HBO show, is not the movie, is not the toys, is not the music, is not the merchandise. And so most marketing people go, make everything look the same. So if we go to the Disney way of doing it, that like everything has to be consistent. And it works, because then if you buy one, you might buy all 6. I actually work the opposite. I go, well, they might not buy any, so how can you get them to buy one? So somebody who's maybe into some of the bands that we had on the movie soundtrack might not look at anything else, but they go, oh, you know, I like those bands, and all of a sudden they go, wow, that was kind of cool. So, you know, maybe, you know, the Spawn thing might be kind of hip. Maybe if I see it again, I might take a look at it. I know I've had a lot of comments in the HBO animation is R-rated, and you know, is always come on at a late night feature. Well, I always knew that in advance. I knew we were going to be dealing with adults. That's a completely different story to tell and a presentation to tell than the movie, which was a PG-13 version. And so you have to sort of go, am I here to let the tail wag the dog, which is homogenize everything, or am I here to say, well, what are the ground rules? Well, it's going to be animated, it's going to be shown to adults, and again, adults are over 18, so their mindset's different than a PG-13 movie, which is you can get people in at 13 years of age, right? So, okay, I got it. Now I have to like start to go there. So you start to create places where people go, wow, I like that HBO, but that movie was, I didn't care. Or that music was cool, but you know, I don't care about your toys. I don't collect toys. Or your comic book's cool. Why can't you make the HBO more like the, you know? So all I wanted to do was create the world of Spawn, and then make all these little doors to it. And one is music, and one is, you know, electronics, and here's TV, and here's movies, and here's, you know, some of the other adventures that we do, toys or something. And then once they're in, then present them with the whole ball of wax and see if there's anything else over and above it. Now, some of it is that they might say, you know, I don't really like Spawn, but you know, some of the other things that we do, you know, I'm doing some music videos or something like that, they're going, he does a music video for that band. Well, they don't necessarily have to like the band per se, but what it does, it says, Todd hangs around with that band, and that band's cool, Todd's cool, so maybe Spawn's cool, right? I'm just trying to give them reasons to sort of stick around to the party. And on top of it, the second thing that I'm conscious of is as time spins by, all of those things, once you're in the door, all those doors will actually start to dovetail. So that pretty soon, within about a year or 2 years from now, there will be a lot more consistency with Spawn. But it won't be at a kid level, it will be at what I consider to be kind of an adult level, which doesn't mean like bazookas and naked ladies and cussing. It just means that you're talking about ideas that are sort of kind of like what's on the newspaper, that most kids don't read the newspaper. Adults read the newspaper. So I want to bring Spawn into the world that we kind of live in and get rid of a lot of the fantasy elements. I'd been working at Spider-Man, at Marvel Comic Books doing Spider-Man. A band of us quit. We started a new company, Image Comics. From Image Comic Books, we had to come up with our own characters. I reached into my portfolio and I pulled out Spawn, a character I had invented when I was in high school. I had sat on him through my whole career at Marvel and DC because, again, their system wasn't conducive to me to pull it out and give it to them, because I would have lost, literally, it's like, you know, here's my little baby and you have to literally give it up for adoption for money, right? So I don't sell my own flesh and blood, so why would I do it to my creative children? So I kept Spawn. And all of a sudden, it's 1992. We've got our new company, and it's like, oh, okay, I like Spawn. He was kind of cool. But I had to go. Okay, now I'm coming from Spider-Man, so I can't make too dramatic of a change. So Spawn, very early in the game, to me, was always going to be a suspense horror character, but not at the beginning, because again, I didn't want people to go, hey, You're doing superheroes, what's this horror crap, right? You can't do that, because again, it's like people don't like change. So what you have to do is you have to go make it sort of look like superhero, and then over time sort of like turn it. So that I would say that out of everything that I do currently, right now, HBO is by far the furthest advanced of where Spawn always was in my brain. If you take the demographics of sports, it's males from 5 to death, right? It's the biggest male demographics that there is. Like once you're a sports fan, you die a sports fan. You don't go, I'm 37, I'm moving on. You know, it doesn't happen that way, right? So sports I can lay on top of any of the demographics that I have, and then all of a sudden, and males, sports males, like they like cool stuff, and Spawn's cool, right? Spawn's cool, and some of the other stuff that we do is cool, and it's like we can, it's like a potential new audience. Like I'm not here to just, as much as I want to be loyal to the audience that's always been there, I want to make sure that I keep creating a new audience. And they go, wow, the wacko that bought a ball is actually kind of normal, and he does that cool stuff, you know, because everybody's going to think like if you got a few bucks in your pocket, you got to be 70 and gray-haired, right? And you got to be an accountant or something like that, or a CEO, which I am, but not in the typical way. And they'll go, "God, he's okay, he's okay." And if they see me taking baseball cuts at the park, and I mean, I'll yard a couple, then they'll go, he's young, he's us, you know what I mean? He's just an older version of the Generation X. You know, and so they're going, it's okay to actually get old because you can still be young while you're old. And then hopefully I can show them all these things, of which Spawn is part of it, and maybe we get, you know, a few extra sales on the DVD. Right now, the audience here today that has these DVDs are actually in the best spot to actually do comparisons. So let's talk about the differences over the 3 years. To talk about it, you know, and as the seasons come on TV, it's kind of tough for someone to go, yeah, let me see what I remember last year or 2 years ago. It's tough to do, but but they physically have them now with these DVDs. That you can now run 18 of these shows consecutively if you've got nothing to do today and you like don't have to go to work, but it can be done. But now some of the changes are going to be very dramatically clear. Let's talk about the visuals first. The visuals will come that from the very get-go, Spawn has always been a guinea pig show, you know. And I don't know how many times I've told that to the staff. There's nothing in America that we can compare ourselves to. There's nothing. What are you going to do when you explain Spawn? You can't go, oh yeah, it's like, what is the like? It's not there, right? You can't sit there. And if you take any example that's usually an animation from Japan, well, most people in America aren't necessarily familiar with Japanimation, so we're sort of kind of our own competition. And henceforth, we must continue to reinvent ourselves because nobody's going to be pushing us. So when we take a look at everything, to sit there and say, wow, this is better than Yogi Bear, isn't really relevant to me, because it's like it's not the same audience, it's not the same look we're going for, and to just say the animation is a little more sophisticated, that's very simplistic, given that we have like 50 levels we have to deal with. So what you'll see early on in the first DVD of the first season is that I believe there's a little more inconsistency in terms of moving people from Spawn's Alley out to the rest of the world. That the colors, for instance, become a lot brighter, so that when you're not in a dark spot, you're in a bright spot. And then there's inconsistency in the direction that was given to the people doing the actual artwork overseas, and getting into feel for it, that they divide certain characters with certain teams, that it almost seems like that there's 2 or 3 crews that are doing the same show, and it jumps at you. And again, it doesn't seem to be nearly as seamless as I would have liked. It's still, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I still will be like sensitive to that issue of making it all kind of meld together. In terms of making sure that the music then plays in with the look that we have, so that it's tying into, you know, sort of the sound that we have for Spawn, and then the sound we have for New York, and the sound we have when we go see Wanda, who's like the angelic character. That has to come into play. And then the biggest change overall really is how you tell this story. People will see, if you look at Spawn, the very first Spawn episode, the one that internally we call 101, first season, first show. It is not by accident that first show started off with literally a bang. It was completely conscious on my part, And it was sort of the same mindset that I had when Spawn became a comic book. I had to sort of make it what they thought it was going to be, and from there, then push it to closer to what it always meant, what was meant to be, which is actually what the third season is. So I had to come out firing, right? Because I needed to come out right off the bat and go, freeze, asshole, and just to set the tone very quickly. So that for the first time person going, Spawn, let's just turn the Spawn thing on, two reactions are going to happen very quickly. One, you're going to sit there and you're going to go, Martha, turn that goddamn crap off. What's the disconnect that? I can't believe that's like cartoons cussing and this is horrible. Change the channel, get the kids out of the room. Or, now that's not who I made that for, or for the right person who went, oh, cool, Fred, did you just see that's a cartoon guy? He just blew his head off and he said asshole. Now, that's not the intent of the show either, but I needed to divide the audience very quickly and go, you're either in or you're out. And if you're in, we're going to have a bit of a roller coaster ride for you. So once I got them in, and they're going, God, Spawn, it's like something that's animation with balls. Because again, I deal with these things, toys and animation and comic books. And the knee jerk in our society is these are for kids. Oh, comics, kids. Oh, animation, kids. Well, why? Why can't you do a story about an accountant who loves his wife, whose kid gets kidnapped, and animate it? The answer is you can. Just nobody's doing it. So what we think of is Saturday morning equals, or animation equals Saturday morning or Disney. Cute, dancing, fuzzy things that sing every now and then. Okay, well, Spawn isn't that part of it. But you can't just do, and this is where, for me as an adult, I got to entertain myself. You can't just do action all the time. I personally am not that enamored with action movies. I've saw the first episode of Star Wars. Haven't seen any of the others. I've never seen the Star Trek movies. Never seen whatever's the big movie. I don't go to them. I just can't do it. After drawing comic books and exploding things, I don't want to see exploding things. So for the longevity of this show, action can't be at the forefront. What you need to have, like any long-running movie, or long-running franchise, or long-running show, is drama. You need to have literally true drama. Now, you can mix it with suspense drama, and you can mix it with action drama, but it's still, drama has to go to the forefront. So I've sucked out as much of the fantasy elements as possible. So the first season had the clown, and they talk about the devil, and they had little angels running around, and they had all these things, and cyborgs, and all those things that are more comic book to me. And as we've now evolved, and you skip into the Chase for Terry in the second season, and now we get into the third season, you'll see that we're really dealing with urban issues now 85% of the time. And there's still the action, and there's still the fantasy stuff, because we still have vampires, and we still got time warps and all these things. But they're done, I believe, in a lot more sophisticated, intelligent way. So as my audience gets older over the years, I wanted to take all the subject matter and grow it up with them. Because by the 900th bullet and the 900th dead body, like, it becomes, even to your core audience, it becomes boring. So for sure, I'm not getting their wife or their kid or their date. So I needed to create something that has enough elements for the guy to go, right on, look at that Spawn. It's kind of cool, and it's dark, and it's edgy, and put in enough drama so that I could grow the audience and actually get some of the female base. And how do you do that? You swap action, but you still keep the edge to it. So is the third season, the third disc here, is it darker in terms of like the ambiance of where everybody is? Yep. Is Wanda's house not as bright as it was in the first season? Yep. Do I believe now we're getting closer to the point where all these settings are the same kind of world, and they're not like, oh, somebody else drew that? Do I believe that the music has now changed? We've got different people doing the music from the first two seasons to the third season, is trying to sort of kind of tie this all together so that the music in Wanda's house isn't really dramatically different from where it is in Spawn. So even the background stuff sort of says this is all taking place within a 20-mile parameter, and you start to believe all the things that are going on. Yeah. And is there still fantasy elements in there? Absolutely. But are they the driving force? No. What's the driving force is, for instance, the show that's in the beginning of the third season, which is the four Italian kids, you know, going out on a joyride and popping, you know, the guy. Somewhere I believe that a lot of us sort of kind of know a couple of those guys in that car. But for the good grace of God, there go I. Like, we could have made that wrong turn and done that. And so it's more interesting. The story is more about the decisions these young kids have to make, and they just happen to turn into Spawn's world. But it's not necessarily about Spawn. It's about these kids who've now entered into his world. Those are more intriguing things that I can keep going for years and years and years, instead of, hey, bad guy, shoot, kill, done, next, move on. Like that show won't survive. One of the things I've found is that the two most popular things that I do really is because where the masses are, television and movies. So the HBO, like I said, is R-rated. Is meant for an audience 18 and older, and the animation is 13 and up, and is an action. It's an action movie. I wouldn't call it drama. But you get people to go, I love the movie, hate the HBO, or I love HBO, hate the movie, like, because they are so different. Well, part of it is that, again, I don't want to keep repeating the same trick. But we're working on the sequel right now, and the sequel now goes into HBO realm. And when I tell that to people like HBO, of course they love it, right? It's like, oh, cool. You know, we're going to actually get to see some of the stuff 3D in live action now. And part of it is, like I said, going back, is that it was always meant to dovetail towards being older and being sophisticated and being consciously aware my audience, for every year that passes, is a year older. So even if you got in at the ground level at 14, like it's been 7, 8 years now, you're 22, the world is a different place. You don't live at home, you got to pay taxes, you got to get a job or going to college, your car breaks down. I mean, all these things that you didn't even think about 6 years ago, this is what the new world is. And so your tastes have also altered during that time. And so the movie is actually just sort of going another step beyond what I do with HBO, which is presenting that Spawn going from the superhero that he was in the first movie to being the boogeyman. And that's really what what I ultimately always saw him being. He's just like our psychic guilt. And if you keep him in the background enough and you backlight him, because again, the cape thing doesn't really work in 3D where it does in animation. Like the best shots, can I say the best shots in HBO are the ones where Spawn is 90% black, a little bit of red rimming him. You see the eyes, his head's black, his cloak is back, he's standing in front of something black, and you pull back and you just barely see him in the shadow. Like when I get those, I just go, oh, there it is, be still my heart. That's my character that I invented years ago. That's the gothic Spawn that just steps out from the shadows and steps back in. And when you can actually see his glove and you can see his costume and all that stuff, you know, I actually, for going back, like since people have the disc, you take a look at it. See how much costume you see in the first disc and see how much costume you see in that third disc, because I laid down the law. No arms, no legs, no chest. Like he is a head and a cape. Every now and then I actually have to show his hands come out. But if you notice, the hands have gone from red to black too, so that then they become dark hands when they come out. So Spawn, if you do him right, is not about a guy in a costume, just like Batman isn't, right? So if you take Batman for the first movie when he's running down the alleyway, like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to, because I can run down an alleyway. I just want him to just go, there goes the bad guy. And in the next scene, the bad guy comes around the corner, bam, and he runs right into Batman. That, I'm going, oh, he just gets there. And he just knows how to get there. So how does Spawn get to the hospital and to Wanda? I don't know. Did he drive a Spawn-mobile? I don't know. You know, did you take the transit bus? I don't know. You know what? It's not relevant. He just does it. And so it gives him more of a ghost kind of presence. And so we all have in our mind what the boogeyman is. And so the HBO and the movie and even the comic books will all go pushing as the years go by into him just being this urban legend of, do you believe that he exists or don't you? Is Spawn successful? Yeah. Is it as successful as Star Wars? Nope. So for a guy who's never satisfied, I still got a long ways to go. Does everybody in Bosnia know who Spawn is? No. You know, should they someday? If I do my job right, then the answer should be yes. Not in the way that they know it because they will buy it, but in a way they just know that he exists. That's really my big key, is that I'd like to invent a couple things, and Spawn being one of them, that the world know that this character exists. So to give you an example, my grandmother hasn't bought a Superman comic book probably ever. Probably hasn't bought any Superman pajamas or coloring books. But if I was to go to Grandma and say, hey, you know who Superman is? She'd go, yeah. Does she endorse it? No. Does she buy it? No. Does she know he exists? Absolutely. And so somewhere along the line, I'd like Spawn to get there. Now, the best he's going to get, because of his edginess, is that Grandma's going to hate him. But at least it's kind of like rock and roll music, right? Turn that stuff down. It's getting loud, Johnny. Gosh, what is that? What is that, noise, or what is that? No, that's ABBA. Oh, in my day, man, you should have seen the music. ABBA, what is that stuff? And so I just need Spawn to just become kind of rock and roll music to the older generation. Just have them kind of like cringe their nose at it and go, I don't get it. I don't understand the youth today. Do I consider myself a celebrity? I guess from the perspective of the average person that has the average job, yeah, okay. But in the big picture celebrity status, I don't think so. The guys that have the biggest problem with that kind of status are people who are sort of in front of the camera, right? So I mean, although I am today, for the most part, I'm behind it. People know my artwork, they know my shows, they know the products I put out, they know, and then every now and then I'm doing an interview, but not enough that the average person then like locks that look into their head and go, hey, I just saw him at the bus depot. No, you know, I don't even think I think the average person would bump into Steven Spielberg and not know who he is. They just go, hey, I just bumped into some guy, rude guy, bumped right into me, sort of looked like Spielberg, and move on, right? Where Michael Jackson, that's him, or Tom Cruise, that's him. So I think I actually have the best of both worlds, that I can sort of have a little bit of fun with the celebrity stuff. I can stroke my ego if I needed to get it stroked, but then I can like walk out of this room today, and the people across the hall, they don't care. They don't care who I am. You know, if you say Spawn, then maybe they might have some recollection, but they don't go, oh, and that's that guy who invented it. That's not there, right? You know, I don't think most people recognize who Disney was until later in his career, even though he had invented some key characters that we all sort of grew up with. So if you sort of don't take yourself that seriously, which I think a lot of these other guys do, because part of doing a lot of interviews and being famous stuff is good for the career, right? What's good for my career is a bunch of people watch my shows. It doesn't matter. I can do 1,000 interviews. If they're not watching the show, I'm dead. I'm a dead man, right? It's irrelevant. So I still consider myself, and it's weird to sort of explain it to people in 30 seconds, but I still consider myself to be a blue-collar kind of guy. I was a guy who grew up literally with no money in his pocket. I wouldn't spend my parents' money because I always thought it would make us broke. I sponged my girlfriend's, who's now my wife's, car till I was 22. I mean, I was penniless up until probably maybe 28, 29 years old. I eked out a living. And so all this stuff that now comes dropping on me is sort of like winning a lottery, right? Just because you win a lottery doesn't change who you are. It just means that, like, wow, I'm a mechanic with lots of cash, right? But I'm still a mechanic. Well, I'm just like the artist guy now who just has a little bit of leverage because of status and because of a little bit of money to go, if you don't want to make this, I'll make it myself because I saved some money and I got it in the bank. And now that's actually starting to work in my favor so that I can now, when I fight the system, go, I've started 7 companies, 8 companies, 9 companies. It's all irrelevant to me. What do I care? And they go, yeah, you know, he's right. He's not sharing the money with us if he does it on his own. Okay, we'll do it with him. But clearing all that out of the way, Tom Cruise and Michael Jordan and Kiss, none of these people are who they are unless the average person walking the street is plunking down their $20 to see them. And if you can't, like, spend some time with those people, like, once or twice a year, just, you know, and for me, it's like a lot more than that, because what do I care? Because I don't take myself serious. I'm not Michael Jordan where everybody recognizes him. But, you know, athletes have got to charge $20 for their signatures at a show. Well, I don't even understand what that's about. I don't get it. It's like, I make $10 million and I need to go to this show and I need to make $20,000. Like, why? Why? You don't think that you wouldn't be the hero of the day if you were an athlete and you went there and you said, once a year, I'm going and I'm signing for nothing. Everybody come and I'm going to stay here for 8 hours. They talk the gospel of you for the rest of their natural life instead of going, he was rude, I only got 2 seconds and he cost me $20. That's, you know, it's like, so I believe that no matter how much I market myself and how much I become a celebrity, it is that the best advertising I have is word of mouth from people. And if they don't think that I'm like, okay guy, and he's like still down to earth, and you know, he does stuff with corn, so he can't be that much of a square, and then I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man. So I have to be my audience. Just as I get older, you know, I get a few more grays in them, but I still want to be young. You have to sort of lay out all the pros and cons of all the things you want to accomplish potentially in life, and you have to give them like a weight factor. And so to say, I got this great idea, I got this music, and I want to write it, and I want to produce it, and I want to sing it, and I want to be world famous, and I want to have my own record label. Well, you know, like that's a nice wish list, but that's not really very practical. So what I would say with people who have their ideas, what elements of your idea of your life are the single most important things to you? Is it just singing? So if you're a guitarist, is it just being on stage and wanting to have people listen to your music? If that really is it, then to get bogged down with all the other elements around it is sort of kind of taking you away from your music. So we touched upon it, like, do I do as much drawing today as I did before I was a businessman? No, because it becomes a bit of a nuisance. So, or is it to say the lyrics that I write, I don't want them change one note? Well, then you're sort of going to have to stay in control of it. But if you don't modify your notes and you get stubborn-headed like myself, then you have to accept the fact that you might be playing in front of 20 people for the rest of your life. So is it more important to have 5,000 in front of you or 20? Is it just about playing true to the note? Like, so all of these things, you have to go on a scale of 1 to 10. What's that? Is that a 10? And then stick to those things. But what I find is that, and you see it in society, is that the business guys like bitch about the creative guys because like, oh, they don't understand it's just artists. But the thing is, without the artist, you got nothing to sell. Now, the artist goes, those guys, those business suit guys, they don't understand it. And it's like, you know, I'm an artist, and they don't get a creative bone in their body. And it's true. It's actually true. But they're the guys that are getting the marketing plan out there to some degree and bringing the people towards you. So my whole fight has never been to flip the execs with the artists and vice versa. It's always been to try to push them more into a compatibility so that they're actually working together so that 1 and 1 becomes 3. If you have a job that you dislike, and you dislike your boss, you have a couple of choices. You can either go by the water cooler and bitch, which most people do, and never quit, or you can quit. But if you quit, it comes at a cost. Now, what's the cost? The cost is my paycheck. Oh my gosh. Well, it's not like you can't get another job. Like all of our parents have had more than one job practically. So you have to just give a priority now to your life and say, is having the big mortgage, the new stereo system, and the Camaro more important to me than getting a bleeding ulcer with my boss and my job? And a lot of people choose the Camaro over the bleeding ulcer. I'm actually the guy who doesn't. I'm like, you know what, I'll walk before I allow you to give me a bleeding ulcer. But it's not for me to tell people that the Camaro is better than the ulcer. So what can happen though is you can quit, trade in your Camaro for maybe a little Honda Civic, take your $200,000 house and trade down to $100,000. I mean, it's still a roof, a car, and a weaker stereo system that have as much water. Like, it's still there. So now are we talking about, well, I know, but it's not like the fake 50,000 megawatt, you know. So it's really kind of, I do actually get frustrated with a lot of people that, like, they want their cake and eat it too. They want the world to be perfect, right? They want a perfect job, and they want a perfect idea, and they want to take everything, and they want any aggravations, and they don't ever want to meet the mother-in-law, and they want to have the top car and this and that, and it's like, and it just, I could solve almost every person's problem. It's all within your control. What do you know, I can't afford a house. Sure you can. No, I can't. I can't pay the mortgage. Sure you can. You make me your representative tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. First thing that happens, I sell your car, your stereo system, and all your trinkets, and I get your down payment for the house. Oh, no, but what I meant to say was I can't afford a house and have everything else laid at my feet. So using all that same mentality, you have to just sort of like go to the factors of your idea. Is the Camaro more important than the ulcer, Or can you downgrade the Camaro and compromise and drive something that's a little bit less, or take the bus, or go buy a bike or a motorcycle and take that money and get you through so that you can live and you don't have to put up with the block. All of those dimensions have to be asked when you're a creative person going, I'm now going to sell myself. How much of myself am I willing to sell? And once you make the deals, then just shut up and go on. It wasn't, it wasn't Spawn that helped facilitate the death of people in Denver. It was a steel gun and a steel bullet that shot through a guy's head. That's what killed that kid. He didn't throw a DVD at them. Stand in line, we're going to get the DVD, right? And, nobody's paying attention that all the American stuff that we dump on the American children also is assimilated through every single developed country around the world. But they don't slaughter 40,000 people with guns. We do. So, to me, it's not an entertainment issue per se. It's a gun issue. Wow, do they get Spawn? Yeah. Do they get Marilyn Manson? Yeah. Do they get Korn? Do they get those video games? Do they get all this violent stuff? Sure. Do they love all the movies over there? Sure. Do they kill each other? Absolutely not. So, we just become targets, and people like to pass the buck because they don't want to actually deal with that you are actually in control of solving a lot of the problems that we have, both personally and society-wise. So I just make my stuff and let everybody be the judge of it. If you take a look at the first season, right, there's more violence, there's more nudity, there's more cussing, and now we don't have it in the third season. Well, is it Todd's getting soft? No, Todd's going to drama. It was always meant to be drama. I just have to start it off with a bang and kind of startle people and move it over into that. What you will find is that those of us in the dark realm of violence, if you will, for the most part, are a little more blasé about it than we should be. And those that don't do it are completely appalled about it. So you sort of need to swap those two opinions so that I should actually have more of a conscience. And those that don't do it should have more of an open mind towards it. But as a parent, let me just tell you, my little girl, Kate, 4 years old, she's one of the voices in the third season. She's Cyan, who's named after my 7-year-old, just that Cyan's too old now to actually be a 4-year-old. So, they all know who Spawn is and sort of kind of what it's about, but has either Kate, my 4-year-old, or Cyan, my 7-year-old, seen any of the Spawn episodes? Absolutely not. So why? Because it's meant for midnight for adults. And so just because I do it doesn't necessarily mean I should give it to my kids. Now, if I thought they were ready for it, would I show it to them? Absolutely. Is it what we call parental discretion? Yes. So what I end up doing is the scenes that have the little 4-year-old are actually really kind of mundane and benign. And so I just kind of show them that snippet, right? Here you come, here's your 5 lines, and here's the doggy, and everybody's happy, and then I stop and I go, how come we can't see the rest? They say, how come I can't see? Well, you just because I said so, which is usually the answer, right? And you move them on. Cyan, who's a 7-year-old, actually had a part in Spawn, the movie, and she has yet to see the movie. She's seen her part where she was in the movie, but she hadn't seen Spawn the movie. And it's not like Spawn the movie, that's PG-13. It's just that I'm the parent, this is my child, I love Spawn, I think it's the coolest, but I don't believe it's even for my own children. So all we can do is just come up with ideas, present them, and then allow people to make the choices. So I go back to the example of that I'm just a vegetable. It's the only thing I can come up with. We're just vegetables. And all of our ideas just another vegetable. And so if you go to the supermarket and you're going to buy vegetables, this is how parents deal in the grocery store. I don't understand why I can't do it with entertainment. I'm going to get some carrots. My kids love carrots. I'm going to get some beets because my husband loves those beets. And I just love these tomatoes. But spinach. We don't like spinach in our family. I hear that spinach tastes horrible at my friends at church. And I don't even know why they even allow spinach in this place. Well, get me the manager. I am offended that you even have spinach here. Well, usually what ends up happening is you just don't buy it. You walk by it. There's the spinach. Walk by it and you're gone, right? So I'm just saying, you don't like Spawn? You don't like loud music? You don't like the games? Don't buy it. Don't let it in your house. Don't think about it. Move on by. Let Laverne and Shirley and Baywatch be the shows you go and forget about everything. You have that in control. Now, if the answer is, well, I can't because I gotta work and I gotta go and do it, and both of us work. Well, Well, then that's a parental decision. You've decided that it's more important for the parents to work than to watch the children. Wow, it's not that easy because we're divorced. Yeah, well, because then you've decided that it's more important to not get along with somebody you made a life vow to than to actually keep a family together. You know, that's not my problem. I'm happily married, so I shouldn't be held accountable for the 60% divorce rate around here. You know, I got kids that actually like me, and I'm the guy who's like doing all the demented stuff. I'm the guy after 5 o'clock who takes my family to the park every day and plays baseball, and have been with the same woman for 20 years, and the kids like me, and all I do is hang around demented stuff.